again, it's Kristen, and I'm going to show you how to make the Poppet for my Poppet Play and Spellwork Challenge. So this is really the Poppet, with clothes on. And what you're going to need is you have the 3-page printable. We're only going to work with the first page right now. So the first page has the Poppet and the clothing. And so I'm going to show you I'm going to show you my process, but I want you to just think about what will work best for the materials and supplies that you have and just give you kind of a couple of ideas. So we're going to focus on just the Poppet first. These are all on the same page, so you probably will have to print this page a couple of times just depending on how you want to, make the clothes, the Poppet, etc. So I think the making of the Poppet can be done a number of ways. I like to put some sort of either lamination, something to cover it, at least on the front, because we're going to be sticking things to it. Of course, you don't have to do the sticky process, but I do like to do that, and that's the process that I will be showing you. I am using project paper. It is kind of like a thinner cardstock. You could use cardstock for this process. The process that I'm going to show you is actually going to be using this packing tape instead of doing a heat lamination. And so, and again, I'm just talking about the Poppet now and not the clothes. If you are using crayons or pencils, I think you could laminate this. You could even just print this on a regular piece of copy paper and then use your color pencils or your, maybe even pastels, something that's not going to really bleed through too bad, and then laminate it. The reason why I'm a little bit more concerned with lamination with this is because I've made a much smaller Poppet than I typically do. I usually do a lot of fussy cutting, but for this one I really thought it'd be best just to cut around the periphery so you don't have to do a whole bunch of fussy cutting. When you do a smaller scale and you laminate it, getting around these corners is very difficult without pulling up the lamination. So that's kind of where I'm going with all of this. So I would say if you are doing something, you're using some sort of pencil or something that's not going to bleed through, I would really just print this on a regular piece of copy paper and color the Poppet in, maybe even put some tattoos. I'm going to show you how I do the hair. You can paint the toenails, like whatever you want to do. And then I would just heat laminate the sheet. And that way, even though it's heat laminated, because the paper is so thin, it should be easier to cut, all around it. What I'm doing though is, since I'm using these illustration markers, I wanted a paper that's a little bit thicker to start with. And so I have just printed it out here, and then the next thing I'm going to do is draw in the hair. And I think I'm going to use this color. And I'm really just going to make, really terrible at making hair, y'all, but she's looking like a clown. I really like red hair, so I'm just going to do a little bit of curls here. Make sure she's got a forehead, and just do some really wild, funny curls. Okay. Once you have the hair, and again, whatever other design decoration you want to put onto the body, just let it dry. And then I'm going to show you how I typically will go through and do the packing tape for this one. So what I'm trying to do ultimately is to get a Poppet where you can take the clothing and stick the clothing onto the Poppet. And then also where the Poppet will stick, where the Poppet can also stick onto a page. And to do that, I use this tape runner. You could probably use any tape runner for this, but I use little bits of this and I'll show you how I use it. But that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. If this is not what you're trying to do, you could do it a completely different way. But in order to do this, I need some sort of kind of plastic coating. I need something for this stuff to stick to. But with the plastic, you can just lift it off and re-stick it. It becomes repositionable. So that is ultimately what I'm going for. Once whatever you have done here dries and you have it like you want, what I've been doing is just taking some packing tape, and really it has to be a tape. I know that all these are not made equally. Let's see, can I get it started? With this packing tape, let me see if I can get it to roll. Okay. It comes out pretty well. Generally, I think I'm towards the end of this roll, meaning it doesn't have a whole bunch of lines and striations and things in it that are going to ruin your image. So all I do is I roll out the packing tape, and then I'm just going to place the packing tape over the design as best I can without getting any bubbles or weird lines in there, wrinkles in there. If you do have wrinkles, I'm just taking like a bone folder and just trying to get out any wrinkles. And I think this is like 2 inches, the width, which I think might be standard. And so you have enough room. I don't know if you can see the edges here. The one edge is here and one edge is here. So I have enough room to cut her out. And so what I typically do, which I'm going to do right now just to kind of separate this one, you just cut it outside of the lines, and then I will go back with my small scissors and do a bit of fussy cutting. I found a little wrinkle in there. Just kind of fussy cut around the outer outline. Doesn't have to be really tight. I kind of make a tight line. You know, do your best on the curves. And then you will have something like this. So you can see how I did this one. Now for the back, I do not put the packing tape on the back, because what I just discovered is that this doesn't work on packing tape. So if you try to do this onto the packing tape, it won't leave the glue residue there. And I don't know if it's just the types that I've tried or whether it's just all packing tape. So we're just using the packing tape as kind of a front cover. And what is interesting is that even though the glue won't stick directly to it, you can stick things with glue on top of it. So that's been an interesting discovery. So what I do is I just leave the back. You can kind of see where her hair is there. I just leave the back plain, and once I cut it out, I just add a little bit of glue. And so I don't know if you can see how much glue I've put here. It's really just a little strip from here to here. So it's not, when I say glue, it's a tape runner. You add a little bit of this tape. you don't want to do the whole thing. You just want a small part, and this might even be too much. So for her, I'm just guesstimating about where she is midway. And I'm just doing a little teeny tiny bump, okay? Let me find another piece of, okay, one of the things that I do even after I put this on, I unstick it, which means I just kind of put it on something and release it. And that takes some of the stickiness off of it. It might sound counterintuitive, but when I tell you, you really don't need it to be super sticky. It's just that little bit of stickiness is going to keep her on the page. And of course, again, I would cut her all the way out. So again, for the Poppet, I really like this way of making it. If you do this particular way on a little bit of cardstock, project paper, something that's a little bit thicker, you still have a nice kind of weight to your Poppet. It's going to be thin, but when you add the clothes, you're going to have a nice weight to it. Again, alternatively, you could do all of this on regular copy paper and then draw, you know, whatever you want with pencils or something like that that's not going to bleed through. And then you could heat laminate it. And then you're going to have a nice lamination that this will stick to. This will stick to laminated paper, not packing paper. And it should still be thin enough and flexible enough for you to cut out. Okay, so those are kind of the two ways that I would suggest for making the Poppet itself. Once you have the Poppet made, then you want to look at the clothing. And again, I'm going to give you two ways to do the clothing, and I'd love to see other ways that you all come up with to do the clothing. So as I said, I like to use these illustration markers. For the clothing, I've been cutting it out similarly to the Poppet. If you just look at this, for example, you can see that I'm cutting around the outside, the outline. And I'm doing a very tight cut, but I think it really works with the design that the Canva Dream Lab gave me. I just think it looks nice, but it also, it means that you don't have to make it perfect is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't have to be exactly on the line. Now to do these with the illustration markers, and again, you can use whatever you want to color these in, but when I've been coloring them in, what I'm doing, for example, here, I'm going outside the line. And for this, I'm just doing solid colors. So most of these I've done just kind of as solid colors. Some of them I'll do like two tones, but for the most part, like this, and you can see I'm just working with some solid colors and I'm going outside of the lines. Okay, so I've gone outside of the line. So when I cut out, I'll still have that purple there. I'm just going to go over this one more time just to make it a little bit darker. And let me see if I can find some examples of these that I've already done. I have really been making loads and loads of clothing. Let's see. This is one. This is the pants here. This is an example of the romper. just in a different color. So you can see that when you, oh, here's another one. I think I see. I just love this little skirt. Okay, so you can tell I like the purples and the greens. So if you go through all of these and you just kind of go outside of the lines a little bit with the color, I think it looks really nice, because otherwise it would be white around the outside. And I think it just works really well. So that's just how I've been doing mine. Again, color whatever you want to color, and then I do a heat lamination on this. And even though this is, like I said, this is a project paper, you could still do a lighter, some lightweight paper again, and just heat laminate it. And just make sure, with the heat lamination, it always makes everything a little thicker, and it's a little bit more difficult to get around edges and things like that. Depends on how well you use your scissors, or how much fun that is for you. I actually like to do some fussy cutting, but I would finish coloring all these in with the markers, and then run it through the heat laminator, and then cut out all the pieces, and get something like this. And I've been doing this for just like solid colors. Now, I also like to have patterns as well. So this is another option. I've just been taking the page and printing it on pattern papers. So I said, if you have scrapbook papers, designer papers, pattern, pages with patterns, this is a great way to use them. And I'm using a lot of them that I probably would never use in my paper pad. So as you can see, I'm just printing them out. This is just regular paper. It's not a cardstock. It's not heavy at all. I just run this right through my printer, just like my regular copy paper. And I have really enjoyed making a lot of different pattern designs. So I'll show you this. These are some that I've made so far with, again, just some sort of pattern paper. And this background is from Camille's Closet. So it's just a little closet kind of printable that I use for putting the clothes into. But all of these were from just different pattern papers. And I think they just turn out really, really nice. And so you don't have to do any coloring if you don't want. You could just print these out. And then again, I do a heat lamination. Heat lamination is both sides. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. So it laminates both sides. And then you can take, I forgot this, the robe is actually a colored one, right? This where I colored it in, and then I just used a darker ink to color in that part, and I really like that kind of two-tone look. Okay. And then again, with the pattern papers, you're going to get a very different kind of look. So these to me are the two options I've been playing with for the clothing. Now, once you get everything laminated and you cut it out, I'm just gonna put this up here. Let's say I want to work with these pieces. Okay. I'm just going to take this off. But something, for example, like this, something pretty small, once it's all laminated, I'm ready to add some kind of sticky substance to it so it can be repositionable. Again, I use the tape runner for that. I don't want to tape everything. I literally am just going to tape a little, it's a tiny little, you can barely see that. It's literally this big. It's just like a tiny dot, okay? And then what I typically do is unstick it. Just kind of pressing it onto something. See, she's already sticking to things. Because the more sticky stuff you have on it, everything will just be sticking to everything after a while. So this should be plenty sticky to put on her. Okay. And that will stay. For something that's a little bit longer, I might start up here and just do a strip that goes kind of right in the middle. Again, it's not too long. Might do a little, or you can also just do another sticky thing down at the bottom. You know, if it's two parts or two pieces. And then I'm unsticking it, unsticking it. I'm just going to put this right over the top. And so it will stick to her body because she has the packing tape over her, and it'll also stick to the clothing because that has been laminated. That was kind of cute. Okay, something that's longer pants like this, I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'll just do somewhere in the, I might do one at the top and then maybe one here. Okay, so you don't want to overuse your tape runner. It can, again, become, everything's just start sticking to each other very, very easily. Okay, and then she has a little bit of stick on the back. So if she wants to stand here in her closet with her new clothes on, you can just put her right there. Okay, so that is how, that's my process for assembly, you know, for the Poppet and for the clothes. So a couple of different options for you based on what supplies you're using, you know, what you're using to color everything in, or if you just want to use you know, whether you want to use markers or whether you want to use colored pencils for the doll. And I also didn't mention too, usually I print the Poppet. When I'm working on the Poppet, I will just print it in a different color paper for the complexion. But you could also, again, just use colored pencils or anything like that. Okay, so once you get the doll finished, you can work on the clothes. You can just color, again, paint, color, marker in the clothes, or you can print them out on different papers that have patterns to give, you know, a really nice pattern look to everything. And then, as I said, once everything has, you know, either packing tape layer or a lamination layer, you can add some of this, some kind of tape runner, just a little bit. Don't overdo it. But you can add some of the tape runner to it so that everything will stick, so that you can take the clothing off and be gentle with it. I'm not as gentle as I probably should be with most of these things. Let's add this. And then you can just take things off and change out her clothes. I think her skirt needs to be down a little bit. It's a low riding skirt. There we go. And so you can just change out the clothes just that easily. Enjoy.